a little bit late, but we made it. Uh, long time friend of mine, but someone I've never gotten a chance to interview, or I don't think we've even recorded anything together, which is surprising. But today we're really lucky. We have a multi-time Dynamics AI ERP MVP, multi-time AXUG All-Star Award winner, I think, current 2025 UG Legend nominee. We'll find out in a few weeks if you get to keep that title, and I'll keep it going. The Sultan of Security, the Larry Bird of licensing, good friend, Dynamics dad, most importantly, Alex Meyer. Welcome.
Hey Drew, thanks for having me, and sorry for the technical difficulties there. Trying to log into Teams can sometimes be an adventure all on its own. So, but thanks for having me, and glad to be here.
We're used to those difficulties. Hopefully, nobody asks any Teams questions today.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we'll see. So I guess before we get to the questions, I got a bunch queued up from folks who have sent them beforehand. We'll
Perfect.
see if people join live and ask some as well. But this is an AMA, so why don't we start off with a quick introduction for those who don't know you, Alex?
Sure. My name's Alex Meyer. I work for a company called Delinea. Recently acquired a company called FastPath, which is probably where a lot of people know me from. Been in the dynamic space since 2013, and really more on the technical side of things. So doing a lot of development within Dynamics 365 applications, and really getting a front hand look at or a front seat to kind of where security and auditing compliance controls come into play across the Dynamics landscape. And then kind of a subset of that was licensing along the way as well. So that's probably where a lot of people have seen my content, whether it's around best practices around security or some of the technical stuff from a licensing or telemetry or just X++ coding or AL coding in general. So.
All right. Well, that's probably a good place to start. I think that's timely that you're joining us for an AMA. For
Yeah.
those who haven't been paying close attention, Microsoft recently announced a change for user license enforcement and the timeline around that, which pushes us, I think, back to mid-January of
Yep.
2026, and will align with your client contract renewal date. So
Right.
you're probably as close to this topic as anybody. Can you give us a rundown of what us as partners and what clients need to be aware of in this change, how to prepare for this licensing enforcement change?
Yeah. So there's kind of two big parts to this. One is the enforcement piece that's coming up, right? So that's something that hasn't been done in the F&O space or AX space in the past, right? You're kind of on your honor type system, right? You had different times that you had to go out and make sure you were compliant during licensing renewals, but now Microsoft is going to start to check your compliance, right, every time you log in. And so that's kind of one of the big changes there. The other thing that they're doing along the way is also changing slightly the methodology of how they're actually determining licensing. So it's always been done at the object level, but Microsoft tried to there was a change in 2019 that they did when they started introducing like the finance and supply chain, project operations, commerce licenses, right, where they started to put a privilege layer on top of it as well. So it was kind of two different license methodologies, and now they've switched that again, where it's now truly object-based that's determining your license and your access to those. But the actual calculation for that is happening within your Power Platform Admin Center. And so that is now the source of truth for all of your licensing, and then that pushes out your license analysis, right, to these different subsystems. So whether it's pushing it to LCS or to D365 for reporting and user security governance or M365, right? All of those systems should be getting their data or getting their fed data from your PPAC environment. And so that's kind of, I think, probably the two biggest changes from a licensing perspective. And so from a partner and user perspective, long-winded way to get there. But, I think it really boils down to making sure now that really your security and licensing has to be a part of any implementation or upgrade or even just ongoing maintenance perspective, right? Because as we all know, right, your D365 environments are not static, right? You have users coming and going, you have users changing positions, covering for somebody else, right? So your access in these systems isn't static. And so there really has to be a process around change management of user roles or user
Hmm.
entitlements to validate, hey, is the license that this user is assigned still meeting the requirements this user has? But are we also then looking at it from the flip side, right? Are there instances where we're over provisioned, right? Where a user is assigned too much of a license for what they're actually doing, right? And so there's kind of this two different ways, right, to look at this issue and like what we need to do from a partner or our IT perspective, right, to help clients be able to answer those types of questions.
That's probably challenging enough for folks like us who are already slightly used to some of the confusion and
Yeah.
layers around licensing. What about new customers coming into Dynamics? I think I saw somebody followed up on one of your blogs and said, "Oh, does this change apply to BC? Does it apply to
Yep.
other areas?" Is the licensing fairly consistent across the products, or is it a mixed bag?
Yeah. I think, the hardest part or one of the things that makes Dynamics sometimes, if you ever have to ask the question, like, why does it work this way? More likely than not, it's because of some legacy uh, setting in one of the systems that they inherited that they're still trying to support, right? And so that's kind of where we are with licensing too. So I think, in the perfect world, Microsoft would love to get to more of a consumption-based license, right? That some of the other D365 environments have. Hey, if I do X amount of, or if I create, 10 sales orders, right, I need this license. But if I create 1,000, I need this license, right? And so instead of having it be more of you have access to this object, therefore you need this license, right? I think that's where they would want to go. But the old AX code or X++ code is all based on the license being done on what you're assigned. And so that's kind of where they have this you know dichotomy or this split, right? And so I think for the most in most cases, right, the license is kind of a combination between what you're assigned and what you are consuming, right? So it's like, hey, I need this base license, right? Or I need a sales basic license, right, to be able to do this, but I need a sales premium license to be able to do more of this, right, kind of thing. So that idea is across D365 environments, but the actual like fine tuned like mechanism behind it is slightly different for F&O in that it's strictly based on what you're assigned.
Okay, makes sense. I'm guessing the answer to this next question won't be different whether I'm talking about 365 for sales, customer engagement, FNSC, CE, et cetera. Um, when when should we start talking security in an implementation,
Yeah,
ERP Dynamics implementation?
that's a great question, and one that my colleague Frank Vukovic and I talk about all the time, right? Because there's it's really hard sometimes, especially when you're going through, as you probably know, implementation. You have a mile long list of to dos, right? And you're trying to
Yep.
prioritize where those all go. And it was really easy in the pre this licensing change from Microsoft. It was very easy to just push off security and licensing and compliance and all of that, and focus on getting functionality working, and then turn around and go, okay, almost after go live even, right? And basically, worry about that at a later date because it didn't immediately have any ROI, right? It wasn't required to go live. There wasn't an immediate ROI on, hey, if we do this, we save X amount of money, right?
Right.
Because normally you had your core set of users were not close to hitting your total number of licenses, right? So
Hmm.
it was really easy to just apply those. But now I think with the change of, hey, we're gonna validate licenses every time a user logs in. I think we have to bring that into the implementation or upgrade or project lifecycle, and it has to be a part of the overall process of, hey, if we're doing implementation or even just adding a new module, right? Hey, what users are going to need access to this, what licenses do they need, who's procuring them, who's assigning them, who's maintaining them, right? Because now if you misassign a license, once the new rollout, happens, or the license enforcement happens, if you're not assigned correctly, the user can't log in, right? So it's not
Mhm.
that they're just going to see this, limited subset of like, hey, here's what I'm licensed to. Like Microsoft, at least for now, has said, we're just going to stop if you're not licensed correctly, we're going to stop the login. Right. And so now you have a set of users that if you don't assign them the correct license, they don't have the correct security, right? Now they can't log into the system, right? And now you're having Sev1, P1 tickets, right, coming in that are, jumping the queue, and you're trying to figure out, everyone's running around, no one can, log in on that go live day. So I think, there's been a slight shift where you have to start bringing that type of setup and configuration into your process, wherever that is in the process. That can change, right? If you want
Right.
to have it be first or something, or earlier in the process, you can do that, but it has to be in the process somewhere, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I can see we have some questions coming in the chat. I'll get to Dag's question in a minute. But kind of going along with that. So starting, typically we like to do it early. Doesn't mean necessarily you have to do, full blown, but getting an idea of what users need access to is always helpful. You mentioned something that could happen now, not being able to log in. That would be a huge issue. There's a lot of issues that can end up with security. If you could say that there's like the worst mistake a company can make, if there's one thing they could do wrong that they shouldn't be doing when it comes to security and their approach to that for an implementation, what would you tell them to to avoid doing?
Oh, over reliance on sysadmin. We see it all. I saw it in my ISV world. I saw it in the consulting world as well for a while. But users that can't perform some task, right? It is, for example, we go back to our previous scenario where there's a go live date or you're adding a new module. They can't perform tasks XYZ, right? In that process, whether it's getting orders out the door, accepting money, right? Something financially related, if they can't perform that, you're going to get a lot of pressure from C-suite and down on just give them whatever access they need because we have to get these orders out the door. They assign that user sysadmin because they can't take the time to figure out the right security. And now that user has sysadmin from that day forward, right? Because there's never a process to go and clean it up after the fact. And so a lot of the times when we would go in to client sites, like obviously the first report that every auditor knows how to run is who are your sysadmins and what are they
Yep.
doing, right?
What are they doing?
But like the amount of times that we showed that list to a client and they were just
They had no idea how
dumbfounded.
many
They
people
had,
had
they
sysadmin.
had
Yeah.
no idea how many people. And then you had the follow up of like, where they had created, it wasn't sysadmin, but it was basically they assigned every privilege in the
Sysadmin
system,
junior.
sysadmin junior, right?
All
And
the rights,
which
just don't give them the title of sysadmin.
right, exactly. So, and the amount of times we saw that was mind-boggling, honestly, where it was they either had sysadmin or, like you said, sysadmin junior that they've created that's some elevated role, and they go out and say, "Why do half of our users have this?" Right?
Yep.
And I kind of equate that type of scenario to trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? Once you assign somebody sysadmin, trying to take that away from somebody is like pulling teeth. Like no one wants to give it up. Now that they know that access is out there, here's everything I can see. Trying to take that away is almost impossible. So
Oh, and
I
it
would
can lead to
say,
bigger issues, right? Because they have access
oh,
they shouldn't,
absolutely.
then they're going to do something they shouldn't do as well.
Right. Yeah, the biggest one, and it's not just intentional fraud, it's hey, I changed this setting. I didn't know the ramifications of what that setting actually does. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, we have orders either not going out the door or going out the door that shouldn't, right? They needed an approval and now I'm bypassing that, right? So there's all sorts of unintended consequences of assigning more access to users than what they actually need.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I've seen it. And it happens a lot when they don't do a UAT or a playback with security, and then you get to go live, and it's such pressure. They just give them sysadmin to get over an issue, and like you said, they never take it back. So it's opening a can of worms for sure. All right, so some questions coming in. Dag has a question. Do you know how Microsoft audits the dual use rights for Power Apps? Meaning, how does Microsoft know that an end user is licensed for D365 and doesn't need a Power Apps license for a particular app? I don't
Yeah,
know if this
that's
is
a
in your wheelhouse, Alex. So,
yeah. So it's slightly it gets a little slightly outside, but the core piece I think of what he's asking is really around more of one, what resources do you get access to with a particular license, but then two, the multiplexing aspect. And so that's one that I sometimes shy away from because it's a deep dark hole. Like once you start going down that path of describing multiplexing to the end user, and they're like, oh yeah, I have 1,000 users that are using, this one integration. And I guess I should describe multiplexing is basically where you have some sort of external system that's accessing D365 information in some way, either performing a business process or moving it from one system to another. And then you have a user in that other system performing some tasks that are on that data. And Microsoft is the way that this is set up is like if you have any automation between D365 and the other system to actually move that data from D365 or into D365, Microsoft says that external user has to be licensed as if they were performing that task within D365 itself. And so as far as auditing that, I've actually never seen a company be audited for that particular issue, right? Or that particular that they were uh, doing that, but at the same time, the end user license agreement from Microsoft explicitly, the licensing guide says this as well, right? That if you have these, external systems that are having integrations in D365, you have to be careful that the users that are using that external system or integration are licensed like they were. So there isn't any built-in audit functionality currently, and I don't foresee this any coming out in any sort of near term. Like Microsoft's just trying to get license enforcement within the application itself done
right.
right now. So I don't think that is anywhere on their roadmap, but it's something that you need to want to keep in mind because I've heard, and nobody that we know would do this, Drew, but I
Nobody.
have heard, consultants in the past say, "Oh, just create one service account, and you can put all of your users behind that service account, and we'll just have this external system push all of instead of licensing 1,000 users, we'll license one user, right, and have some system push, API requests into D365 and just have it work that way, and it'll work. But from a true licensing perspective, that's where you can get into trouble."
Yep. Yeah, it's muddy waters for sure. We'll keep it going with Dag. He's got another question here. Do you see companies creating bespoke roles for their integrations for Entra ID apps, for example?
I can speak for um, mm, I can speak for FastPath because I write all the ISV integrations and we create least privilege roles for all of the integrations that we have. So anything that has an app registration that is integrated into these systems has a least privilege security role tied to it in some way, shape, or form, and it's tied to what that particular integration is doing, right? So anytime I hear an ISV or any third party app, doesn't have to be an ISV, but even third party or any customization that requires a sysadmin integration, that just throws up red flags, right? Because just like you wouldn't want to assign sysadmin to users, you shouldn't be assigning sysadmin to these integrations either, because that's just opening that another pathway to fraudulent activity in your system.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good call out. For consultants and developers, what about just like modifications? We create new tables, new forms people need to access. Do you typically are on the side of creating entirely new roles for that, or duties and privileges sufficient in adding those to existing roles?
Yeah. So I think you can take a couple different approaches there. The way that I set those up, right? If we're going in, like when I was doing consulting and going in and setting it up, we would include least privilege security along with the project files. So if we were creating
Hmm.
custom tables, menu items, any code elements or development artifacts, right? We would put the security that went along with that in the integration. Now, you could um, you can either the part about do you create duties and privileges or create roles and assign them to user, that's more on the client by client basis, where how does the client normally do this type of setup, right? Because some clients want to strictly do, hey, I want one role assigned to a user at all times, right?
Yeah.
And that was their mandate. Okay, well, we can add this as a duty and privilege under the role that that user has. Cool. In my, from a best practice perspective, I personally like seeing the individual customization or integrations or anything that's above and beyond what that user normally needs. I like to see that called out in their role assignments, because then it's really quick to review and say, okay, this user has these roles, and oh, by the way, they have these customizations and integrations assigned to them as well, right? And
Yeah.
so it's easier to do that than, I know that like myself or you and more technical folks, right, or would be able to go down to the duty level and be able to go, oh, they are assigned this, but that's not everyone isn't going to be comfortable doing that. So the easiest way that I've seen is just create a role for all of those customizations and assign those across.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll switch it up. We'll go away from security and licensing for a minute. We're here. It's October 3rd, so it's officially conference season for us, Alex. We got a bunch coming up. We have the summit in a few weeks. We have Power Platform later this year. We have Convergence later this year. You've been going to a lot of these events for years and years. What makes a good community event?
Oh, that is a good question. Um, yeah, I think from a community perspective, one of the things that I really like to see at these events is the engagement from other attendees, right? And when I say engagement, I mean either in the actual like sessions, right? Having good questions, um, and back and forth and dialogue and helping each other out, as well as not being afraid to go up and talk to people at the event. Like, hey, I've seen your blogs, or even going to like roundtables and things like that too, where it's like, hey, we all have the same problem, right? How can how are other people solving this, and what can I take back to my organization, right, to better solve this? And so I think um, yeah, I think you probably know this too from presenting. There's nothing worse from a presentation perspective than not getting any sort of feedback from the audience, right? And just they're all just kind of sitting there nodding along, like, "Yep, we get, we understand this," and there's no questions. And then, so I think from a community perspective, having that engagement, it doesn't have to be anything super big, but just being open to talking with others, talking about your issues, asking what others have done, and not being afraid to, look silly or uninformed or whatever, right? And like we're all in this together, and I think that's one of the things I put that on almost every slide deck that I present on is like, don't feel like you're on an island by yourself, right? Make sure that you're like there are other people here that want to help you, that can help you, right? So we just need to find who that is and get you, talking with them. And so I think that's one of the ways to go about that. And so normally I would say that a lot of the events, whether it's the summit event that we have coming up, Dynamics Con earlier in the year, the smaller regional events, right? All of these have slightly different ways of engaging or performing that, and it's really about how do you find for each event, right, how do you best facilitate that. So obviously Summit is going to be much larger, right, than some of the other conferences, and so it can be a little bit overwhelming, but whether you have 5,000 6,000 or 1 or 2,000, couple hundred people, right, I think trying to find that the community within the event is really important.
I agree. So, talked about presenting and people not engaging or just kind of getting those glazed eyes. I think you've been a part of some pretty interesting Friday morning sessions at Summit in the past to address this issue, to try to get people to come to sessions. I don't know whose idea this was originally, maybe Frank's, Do you want to tell people maybe what some of those session titles have been called in the past around security?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the ways that you can, try to uh, get people to come to your sessions, right, is to juice the titles of your sessions a little bit, right? And so, uh, one of the ones that Frank, again, loves to do, and I'm actually going to be a part of as a panelist this year, is the audits, beer and donuts, right? And so everyone always asks, is that just a fancy title, right? And it's like, no, we've for years now, he's always wanted the last session of the conference at Summit, and they really do. We bring beer and donuts to the session itself and hand them out to whoever wants them. Uh, and really the idea is, one, to kind of wrap up the conference itself, right? And two, to kind of make it so it's not as uptight, and to get people talking, to kind of open it up and make it more, not so much as we're speaking to you. It's more of a conversation that we're having over drinks or over a brunch of donuts. So that's one of the many ways that we've tried to enhance or to facilitate the engagement in the past.
Yeah, I like it. I think, like you said, sometimes people can be intimidated by some of these conversations or the amount of information or who they should talk to. I think it brings some levity to it, and it allows you to have that hook to bring people in. But you've done it for so many years. What keeps people coming back, what keeps new
Right.
people coming, is because you guys bring great content to that meeting. You back it up with the
Yeah.
expertise. So you hit the marketing side, but then you're still actually backing it up with some knowledge, and
Yeah.
helping these folks with their implementation. So
For
I
sure.
always like that from a community session. It can get really dry and serious in some of the stuff we do on a daily basis. So I
Oh yeah.
appreciate the effort in those sessions. What about online sessions? Do you find any value in those? Have you attended any online conferences and seen how those can differ or offer different opportunities?
Yeah, so I've done a couple. You presented at a couple, like, more regional or sessions that I wouldn't normally get to speak at. I'm actually doing one next week for, like, the India user group, right? So that's taking place as in on site in India, right? And obviously, me living in the United States, that's kind of a haul for me to get there. And so it does allow me to speak at places that I probably wouldn't be able to, and to address some organizations and individuals, right, that wouldn't normally be able to hear me speak about things. But also, uh, I will say that it's for situations like that. It's great to have those virtual type of events that you can get to. Obviously, I do think that in-person events are you're always going to be able to make a little bit more of a connection, right? It's hard to make those types, as we all learned from COVID and everything else, right? Around the world, but it's not always feasible to get everybody in person, and so I think those types of events still have their place, and it's kind of, I think they work in tandem with in-person events, right? I don't think you replace one with the other, right? I think you kind of enhance or supplement, I guess, the events when you do that.
Yeah, I've gotten a chance. I think India user group is probably one of our most active. I got a chance to speak on behalf maybe last year with them. Rakesh and his team do a great job with that user group, and that's awesome that you're helping out and contributing there. I think that's the biggest piece of the Microsoft communities, is how collaborative everyone is worldwide, right? A lot of us work essentially for competitors, but you can see a lot of the same faces assisting each other's contributing an education across the community to other partners, clients. So I think that's a great way to help out. And, one of the reasons why that long list of titles that I made fun of at the beginning is on your behalf, but super appreciative there. So who's your favorite follow? There's a lot of people like yourself. You do a lot of licensing and governance stuff. Andre does a lot of licensing and auditing stuff. We have so many MVPs, people in the Dynamics community, Microsoft folks who put a lot of stuff out there to keep us all informed. Do you have any particular accounts that you keep an eye on?
Yeah. Obviously, I read. I do point people to your stuff quite a bit. Anything warehousing related, I point them directly to you. But from
Major
going
mistake
out,
right there.
me,
Major
uh,
mistake.
but no, Peter Raymer is a great follow from RSM. Him and I are actually doing a development and administrative academy course at Summit together. So we did that last year as well. He anything that he puts out, I know is going to be super high quality. Brittany Burke, from a finance perspective, anything that's finance related, I point people directly to her because she knows all of the different financial stuff that I have no idea how some of those inner workings fall out. So, I think there's a lot of, I think we all kind of have certain areas, right, that we feel more comfortable in, right? Even though we all work in the same system, right? There's so many different pieces and parts to it that, you kind of have to find the areas, right, that you're more comfortable in and find the people that are writing about that. Bo is another great one, I guess.
You had to say it. His ego's gonna get so big.
I know. No, no, but he does. I mean, he creates great content too. I like the list. There's such a long list. I mean, I mean, you go down the list. There's all sorts of like
It's a lot of
people that
dynamic stats in that list, I noticed. There
a
must be something to
lot of
those
dynamic
guys.
stats. Yeah. No, I think there's so many, and I apologize. I'm going to forget people that that have really, really good content. But I think that speaks to, again, the fact that if you have an issue in D365, there's probably somebody out there that has either written about it or written about similar topics that could probably answer the question you have. And it's really just trying to find who that person is that can help answer that, right? Because all the people that I just listed write about different things in the community or within their area, right? And all of them have wealth of knowledge that is much deeper than mine in some of these areas, right? And so it's like, just being able to know where those resources are is super important too.
Absolutely. I follow pretty much every name you mentioned, amongst many others. So
Yeah.
all good ads for those who are listening who don't know those folks. Look them up. All right. So I don't know if we'll go fully till 1 Eastern, but want to make sure we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about AI. So we'll
Yeah.
maybe finish up with some questions there.
Sure.
So what is, I focus a lot on supply chain and manufacturing, and I know what Microsoft's doing and what we're doing as partners to try to supplement that space and give agentic tools to organizations to solve problems. How does this play into security? What kind of questions are people asking with AI and Copilot related to security?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest questions that we are getting is um, how do I control what data Copilot has access to? And is the data that I'm giving to Copilot secure and safe, right? Because I think immediately there was a backlash from a lot of sysadmins that they immediately were like, we're not going to allow ChatGPT, AI at all in our organization because we don't know where this data is going. We don't know the governance tools that are being used. And so we can't let proprietary information out into these potentially, what the data could be used to train public models, right? And all of a sudden we have proprietary information out in the public, right? So 100% get that. And so Microsoft started to answer some of those questions around like, hey, let's basically put guardrails up around your data. This is your AI instance, right? Trained on your data, and it's only, uh, that's the only people within your organization are the people that can access it, right? And so I think that was kind of step one. And now we're starting to see, again, Frank and I just did a session on agentic AI and securing your agents that you have, right? And I think that's kind of the second wave of like, okay, we have AI in our system. We want to start creating AI agents that can go and do, or certain tasks or analysis or workflows, right? Or bringing all this together, and we want to be able to make sure that we secure it correctly. And so I think that's kind of the next wave from a security perspective. And Microsoft is, for their part, right, done certain things that I think help with that. But I don't think, like most things in AI, I don't think it's fully baked across the board yet. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done still. But I think that is kind of the area where I see the most traction, I guess, or the most questions around AI is like, how do we secure it? How do we secure the agents to make sure that they are only have access to what they need to do? We put guardrails around it. The other thing from an audit perspective is, can I, track what this AI agent is doing, right? And can I put a workflow in place, right, to have a human interact at some point along the way, to validate kind of the processes that it's doing. So I think the two big takeaways from that I've seen recently is making sure that you're treating your AI agents the same way you do users within your system, right? They should have least privilege security. They should have user access reviews, right? We should be reviewing what this user is doing. And then the other thing is to make sure that you keep a human in the loop of any AI task, right? As smart as AI is, it's really hard if your AI agent goes and does something that shouldn't have been done. It's really hard to point the finger at an AI agent and be like, why did you do this? Don't do that again, right? So having a user in the loop to, sign off on what this AI is doing, is something that I think a lot of organizations have to do, right? Because I don't think that you can just turn a blind eye and say, oh, well, the AI did it, so I think, we're in the clear. I'm sorry, Mr. Auditor, that, we don't have reports, or, that our, GL is all out of whack because the AI agent's out there, performing transactions. And so those are the two big takeaways that I think recently that I've kind of seen.
I think that's great advice. It reminds me of that old cartoon or that meme of like a user design and then how the developer actually develops it.
Yeah,
It's like this
right.
cartoon horse and then it's this crazy, depiction, and it's treating that agent like a user. They're going to be
Yep.
automated tasks, doing tasks, then they need to have all the training you would normally like, right?
Right.
We don't want it to think on its own and just have disaster happen. So I think that's great advice. This next question is either going to be go very well or it's going to be a disaster, because you might not understand what I'm talking about. How do you feel about Tilly Norwood if we're talking about AI? Do you know who Tilly Norwood is?
I That name is not familiar to me, so
So
I
Tilly
apologize.
Norwood is this new AI generated actress that apparently is
Okay.
causing an uproar in the industry, because she is so lifelike, and all these companies are vying for licensing to use her image and her likeness.
Okay.
So I was curious to hear, but if you're
No,
unfamiliar, then this might not play well.
no, I think it, the not agentic, but the AI generation of any, of images or uh, uh, you know, likeness of anything, I think is an area where it's a very slippery slope right now because there isn't a whole lot of um, legality around it, or basically frameworks around it, like what is legal, what's not legal, from that perspective. And so
Like if we
I do,
trained an AI Alex to present virtually at a conference, could we legally charge people for that
right.
AI depiction?
Yeah, and I mean that's the best case scenario, right? I mean, so I think I do think that there is a lot of things that probably need to be sorted out because the speed at which AI, like most things in technology is way ahead of the legal side of things, right? And so now you have technology being able to create image and likeness and yeah, deep fakes and all of this, right? And it's a question of how do we have ethical AI, right, around this, and legal AI, right? And that's really hard again because especially if you're an organization and you're, even if you say yes, I want ethical AI and all of that, it's really hard to uh, from your if an AI is trained on this public data and the public data has images and likenesses of people, right? How do you stop the AI from not using that image and likeness as a source, right, or as part of its generation? So yeah, I mean, I think that that's a really interesting topic that you can go super deep on. But it's something where, again, technology is just ahead of the legal side. And so there's a lot of gray areas right now.
I think your insights are spot on. So not even knowing who she is, a lot of the talk has been about how she looks like all these different actresses combined.
Right.
So you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? It's trained on all these
Yeah.
public images. They create this thing, and then there's an uproar about it. But it's Friday. I know you seems like you might have kids in the background, but
Yep.
we hit everyone's questions. Your insights and
Sorry.
time is massively appreciated as always, Alex. So
Yeah.
have a great weekend. Good luck at conference season, and thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. Really looking forward to seeing everybody this fall. And yeah, always great to talk, Drew. Happy to do it.
Thanks, Alex. Take care.
Yep. Have a good one. Bye bye.